Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready for the Wot Supp podcast. With your host, Stu OG Industry Shannon and Will Warren Davey, new school formulator extraordinaire. We're talking all things supplements with insiders, athletes, experts, and more. So sit back, relax, and prepare to find out what's up.
Welcome to episode 7 of the Wot Supp podcast. I've been excited about this one. We have with us Daniel Knust, who is, well, he's done a lot of things actually. He's a businessman. He owns a gym. He is ICN IFBB Pro. Oh, sorry, ICN Pro. What am I talking about here? ICN IFBB Pro. I've created my own new bodybuilding federation. He's an ICN Pro, which is a natural federation. So we have a natural bodybuilding pro. He also has an in-house supplement brand, which is not really heard of in many gyms. It's not something I've seen done before. He's a mindset coach. The amount of different things this guy's done is pretty phenomenal. I'm going to throw to you now, Daniel, to talk us through sort of what you've done and how you've managed to achieve so much in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah, sweet. Thanks for having me on too, by the way. It's a pleasure to be joining you guys and big fan of your work. So good to see you guys killing it. But basically I've been in the space for over 10 years now doing PT and then building up into doing outdoor group training and then working at Fitness First for a number of years before it shut down here in Wollongong. And then evolved into from a smaller space of a gym, moving to a bigger space where we are now, growing a membership base, still doing outdoor training at the same time, and then going through some competitive years of myself, starting in 2015, doing some natural bodybuilding shows in Sydney and then going to state titles there. And I remember coming second in my division the first time I competed there, and that just made me hungrier to come back 2 years later in 17 and put a lot more work into it and really prepare on a bigger scale with a better coach and come in and manage to do really well and win state titles, and then go on to win the national title and the pro card and go over to do a pro show overseas, which is a good experience too. But it's been an amazing journey, man. We've got a great community of people. It's something that inspires me on a daily basis to be a part of it. Like at the moment, we've been going through some challenging times business-wise, as a lot of people are. And I've said to the crew a lot of, frequently lately, is that the community that we've got has helped me get through some of the challenges as well as, some of them at the same time. So it's been a great journey, and I'm very grateful for the fitness space, the industry, and the opportunities that it's given me, my family, the people I've met along the way, and, winning pro cards, all that sort of stuff. So yeah. Absolutely love it.
So those of you who don't know, a lot of the local listeners who are listening in will already know Daniel, and they'll know his gym. But Daniel's gym is Definition Fitness, and it's kind of like there's this cult following that's kind of developed around Definition Fitness, and it seems like, once you go there, that's it. That's kind of that's your gym and that's your people, and it's really this. I don't even know how would you describe it, Daniel? It's this community kind of thing that happens, and once you're a Definition person, you're in the Definition family, right?
Yeah, I think that's the community aspect of it has been massive for us, and I noticed that from like years and years ago. I'm talking like 8 or 10 years ago when we was doing one-on-one PT and I was doing lots of hours there. Then started to expand into doing some group training. And once we started to get people coming together that were like-minded, had similar goals, were supporting of each other as well, like everybody just lifted, and everybody, like one of the basic human needs for us, once we've got safety and shelter and stuff like that, is to belong, right? Is to be a part of a tribe from tribal times. So what we've recognized that, and then worked on how can we improve that aspect of what we do so that people not only come to train to get jacked and get shredded, get fitter and healthier, but also to belong to a community where, you feel, I guess, supported and loved with people that align with what you're about in life and your goals. Because a lot of people, I think, have goals. For example, they might lack the support network of people around them that want to get fitter, that want to eat well, that want to train hard, that want to, do those sorts of things.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
And so, I mean, like, where do you even begin with this? There's so much that we could, there's so much that we could talk about. And, obviously we've only got you for sort of 40 minutes to an hour. I know you're a busy man. You've always got a million and one things running, but let's touch on, let's get into a little bit about supplements. Being that you are you're a pro bodybuilder. Those of you who haven't seen Daniel's shape that he gets into when he's doing his shows, jump onto his Instagram, because I can tell you right now, the guy gets diced, and there's a lot of muscle mass there too, which is surprising for me. I've worked with a lot of natural athletes over the years, and it's very rare that you see someone who manages to, I guess, develop that kind of mass and have that kind of shape when they're natural. Where do you sit on the supplement front?
To be honest, yeah, my take on supplements is obviously that they are, at the end of the day, supplementation to your, main structured routine around quality training, quality nutrition, sleep and stress management, etc. Those big rocks that really make up the big portion of our results, whether it's muscle gain, strength performance, or it's fat loss, for example. But I've definitely, like you said before, I've got my own supplement line here that we do to look after our members and support them with just some basics, because that's what I think the most important ones for people to be using. I came up doing a lot of work with, so I started off doing Poliquin work. When I got into that,
yes,
awesome. I started off with him teaching me, doing biosig, and being taught that, these supplement bundles were going to be the answer to your results. This was before I knew in-depth nutrition, before I knew, the advanced principles around programming and training and stuff. So my journey's been starting off with supplements being the answer, paying all this money to buy these supplement bundles, for example, but not following energy balance principles, not following progressive overload principles, for example, putting the cart before the horse, as they say. And then over time, realizing that no, there's so many other things that were more important first, and then supplements can be like the icing on the cake type scenario. So I've used a lot of supplements when I was competing and prepping. The coach I work with was a big proponent of a big supplement stack, and I used it all because I followed everything that he told me to do. But these days I'm a bit more minimalist with just some straight WPIs, creatines, fish oils, probiotics, magnesium, melatonin. They're probably my go-tos to look at sleep and stuff like that. Love some caffeine. I get a lot of caffeine into me each day. But that's pretty much, my stance around the supplement journey with it as well.
That's very interesting with the Poliquin days too, because I think a lot of the OGs worked around that era and the biosig, and I think he was one of the first guys that really put a highlight that far back on things like sleep quality and the hormonal aspect of supplements, I believe. And I think we, early in my research, about a similar sort of era, about 10 years ago, where the hormonal space was when it was very exciting because it was so new and no one had really focused on it until Charles came along and really made that a big thing. And he only sort of worked with some very gifted trainers at the time here in Australia, so the reputation quickly grew. That was a really effective way to help clients. And I think it's really interesting seeing where your position is on the idea of the impact of, so when you mentioned there the energy balance idea with nutrition being foundational, when we look at, what do you think about the influences of, say, the hormonal stuff on the energy balance model? Because I've seen there's a lot of things with saying, the early works with the likes of Lane Norton and such, who are really big on just saying it's literally just energy in, energy out. And then there are people who are more so like, yes, energy in, energy out, but also the ins and outs are manipulated by your hormonal profile. Where have you sort of come to over the time, particularly now as a natural competitor? Hormones are king, optimizing your natural hormonal profile. That's androgens, that's cortisol, that's everything. How's that all tie in together with how you approach training your clients, mate?
So for me, based on experience over time, the trends that I've seen, the patterns that I've seen from, people, what they will ask and what they'll talk about, and what the psychological, concept that they'll come up with as well, is that people can be a little bit too quick to blame hormones or to use that as a bit of an excuse as to why they can't get shredded or why they might not achieve the results that they want. And I find that energy balance does rule in 95, 98% of cases. There is those outliers, people with medical conditions and stuff for sure. But in my personal opinion, I think I've come across a lot of people who are very quick to blame hormonal profiles or different things as to why they're getting lack of results. But when you start to break it right down, and their consistency over time may not be there, their nutritional tracking might not be as accurate as it could be, and there's all these little spots that are being left unchecked. But it's rather than go through and really dot every I and cross every T, it's easier to go, well, I must be insulin resistant, or these sorts of things that hasn't been diagnosed. There's no real proof of that, but they will sort of be quick to blame something else.
This was, that's really interesting. I think that because that was a chat that I had people like Luke Lehman with Muscle Nerds, Dean McKillop with Flex Success, other really well-educated personal trainers in the similar sort of space we all occupy. They're in a similar. I've had a similar conversation with those guys where you're right, man. Because I particularly as a formulator, I a lot of my products focus around helping, particularly around the adrenal space. That's really where I've sort of, spent a lot of time recently and seeing how much of an impact that can have on people. But it's also really worthy of note. I think, like you said, when you go down to things like consistency of tracking, that blew me out of the water. Anyone at home who uses MyFitnessPal right now, do yourself a favor. One thing I didn't realize until I started looking closer, because I used to just go through MyFitnessPal, you'd scroll through the 25 entries of chicken breast you've got, or the 25 entries for rump steak, whatever it might be, and it can be give or take 30%. And over a daily intake or a weekly intake, your perceived energy balance versus what it actually is can be massively out. So how do you encourage your clients to work there, Dan? Well, what are some of your, how do you track? Do you get your clients tracking, or do you just set them a plan and it's more trust the process sort of thing? Like, where do you go with that?
We've got some fairly detailed online tracking systems that we use with our clients, where we're getting them to track their morning fasted weight each day, and then we'll averages out the spreadsheet. We'll average it out for them so we can track, weekly average fasted morning weight to get those accuracies, and then look at trends over time. Then we look at weight loss, fat loss phase. We're trying to lose usually 0.5 to 1% of body weight on the average per week. So we know that we're retaining muscle and we're not overdoing it, etc. And then, tracking daily macro intake, calories, fiber, sodium, workout, daily step count. Even then getting people to do a snapshot at the end of the week of rating their motivation, their energy, their digestion, their sleep quality, their nutritional quality of intake, and then hours of sleep per day, and looking at that. And I think so many of those things play a role. And what I was going to say before, I think a lot of the boring stuff, right? Getting good quality sleep is going to, get you great results. But a lot of people like to stay up late, or they won't get away from technology at a reasonable hour to get good quality sleep. And something that comes up, I've been tracking my sleep with an Oura ring, right? Looking at HRV and stuff, and sitting at about 50, resting heart rate of 50 beats per minute. The other night I had a few glasses of wine with my wife and some friends. That night my resting heart rate was 69 beats per minute from the alcohol.
Oh, yeah, wow. So that's something that you just don't know unless you're tracking with something like that, right? It's pretty crazy. Things, right? Yeah. Well, the one thing that I do know about you, Daniel, I have worked with a few people who have been clients of yours and such. You're the spreadsheet man, right? You love, this is something that will impress you. Well, he's got these spreadsheets and they're like, there's so many different inputs and they do all these calculations and stuff. And it's just these really detailed spreadsheets that you use, right? I don't know if you're still using that kind of system, but it's really cool. And it's something that I actually looked at and I went, wow, this is next level, because I was a personal trainer for a long time myself. I had a business for a long time called The Bride Buster, where I just prepped women for their weddings. Yeah. That was all I did. My entire business was women's wedding prep. And, I found for me, and I don't know if you've found this, but I found generally speaking that women tend to be a little bit more of an enigma than men. Like, men's bodies seem to be a little bit more of a computer. You put the data in that you want and it spits out the right result. But with women, it seems to be that there's a lot more variables and it's a lot trickier. And had I had something like these spreadsheet systems that you've developed, I think it might have made life a lot easier for me.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing I always talk about, is that you want to try and remove as many margins of error as possible and get as much data that you can collect to then make a educated, approach with adjustments to training. And from early days working with clients, it's like, how's your nutrition been? It's been good. And it's like, well, what the fuck does good mean? So very good. Right. That's so subjective. So it's like, okay, I need to know, what is your intake? What's your body weight doing? What are your overall calories? Where are the weekly averages at? How much are you moving? What's the intensity of your training at the moment? So many different factors. And then we can look at that, and we can look at, the physique, and then feedback and all these sorts of things, and then compile and make decisions from there, Will. Yeah.
So what's your sort of input then with, because I know there's, like you said, there's so many levers you can pull. And I'm a massive fan of Ben Pekulski with this saying, where he's always saying, he refers to it as like an engine, and you can pull different levers, which being different inputs and different things you can track to get a different outcome on in a physique change. So let's say, and it's obviously different for someone like yourself, pro bodybuilder, they're going to be looking at, we're going to be looking at one of any 20 odd variables, which go right into micronutrient profile, looking right into sleep quality, cortisol, things like, even HRV. That's awesome. And the Oura Ring is wicked, by the way. I want to get one. That's really, really sick, man. With an average, but let's say everyday people though, and let's walk through beginner versus advanced. What are some of the most common levers? I could imagine Joe Blogg walks into the gym, someone who's, our usual Gen Pop sort of client. What are those first places you go? Because for me, sleep is my big jam, whether they're advanced or beginner. But I always love hearing people like yourself who've been around the game a long time. And, with normal people, it's about finding the minimal effective dose sometimes because they might get overwhelmed with too many things. Yeah. So what do you do first? What's your sort of general, break it down for Joe Blogg?
So I think, that definitely is a big factor that needs to be taken into consideration, that getting somebody that's a beginner and going, okay, you need to track all your food, you need to track all your steps, you need to track your cardio, et cetera, just becomes way too much. And then you lose the consistency factor, which is the most important thing, being able to stick to it, right? So often what we do is we'll start with a consultation, which will be a chat with a person to see where they're at, their personality type, whether they're likely to like that sort of thing and learn more about it, or they want to start a little bit more on the beginner space, which could be just working on tidying up their nutrition, where it might be just trying to hit, 5 servings of protein per day, 3 to 4 servings of veggies per day, for example, and just starting with super basic guidelines or principles there. Then from there, looking at movement, I think is a big one because it's one of the biggest things that so many people don't track by tracking daily steps, essentially looking at NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, the amount of energy that people are burning, and like looking at, the percentage base that a workout might be 5 or 10% of your daily calorie burn, but your NEAT can contribute 20 or 30%, and people aren't tracking that. They're not looking at that. So if they go and start to diet, subconsciously the body starts to down-regulate metabolism, NEAT starts to drop, you move less, and you could lose 20 or 30% of your daily calorie burn over time. And if you're not tracking it, you don't realize why your fat loss is stored. It's like, well, I'm training, I'm trying to eat better, for example, but I haven't lost any fat. What's going on? But they don't know that they're subconsciously, they're literally moving less, because if I was dieting, I might be sitting here like talking like this, not even moving my hands. For example, the body knows that it's starting to slow down the energy burning process. So working on that with people, and then the stress management side of things as well is like, looking at where are they at with how stressful is their job, their relationship, what's their quality of sleep like. So I think there's some really big results you can make from tidying up the nutrition, getting people moving more daily, like getting their steps up, tracking their steps, giving them step targets, 8, 10,000 to begin with, and then progressing on from there, getting into the tracking data, everything really, really closely for the more advanced guys.
Yeah, 100%. And that's something that, I think there's this stigma sometimes around the supplement industry and, being someone who owns a supplement store. I run into this all the time. But kind of everything that you've said there really ticks all the boxes that I'm looking for as well when someone walks into my shop. So I have all my guys, I give them all step goals. And after I sell someone a supplement, I have them come back in 2 weeks to check in with me. And we do that every 2 weeks, and I'll manipulate their step goals. I don't really, because I'm not operating as a trainer for them, I just don't have the time to do that. I'll rather send them to someone like yourself. But something that I can do for them is give them step goals. And I've found for me, the step tracking to be probably the biggest tool that I have in helping people. There's something that I ask every single person who walks in is, how are you sleeping? How many hours of sleep are you getting a night? How much water are you drinking a day? And then we look at things like caloric intake and movement, tracking steps. And that's before we even talk about supplements. And I think that, a lot of people assume that they're going to walk into a store like mine and the guy's going to be like, hey, step right up. I've got a magic pill to solve all your problems. But, it's not like that. And, in fact, I think coming back to the supplement side of things, something that I would like to, I guess, remind people of is that there is no magic pill and there is no supplement that exists that can, you cannot out-supplement a poor diet, and you cannot out-supplement a lack of effort and work. It doesn't exist, right? So once we've sorted out those basic things, the sleep, you've got them on a program that you're happy with, you're monitoring their intake, their diet. Where do you go with supplements from there? Do you try and keep your beginners right away from supplements until they become more advanced? or, what's your stance on that?
I like to look at it on an individual basis in terms of where they're at, take into consideration like the financial side of things as well for some people, and also like where they're at with their psychology around what are the most important things. I think that's really important, because one of the challenges I just thought of when you were just chatting just then about people sometimes expecting you to try to sell a magic pill, the challenge that I think a lot of us face is a lot of people are looking for that as well.
Oh, they are
100%. Yeah, from a coaching space, if we go there too soon, they don't, we don't put enough importance on, their steps and their consistency of training, for example. So I like to spend a fair bit of time reiterating that with them before we then look at adding too much more in. Because from experience, if we jump over that too quickly, it's like, I'm taking X, Y, Z so I can, maybe skip this and not do that and not track that, etc. And the results should still come, and then they become demotivated and lose motivation when the results don't show up the way they want. But with the guys that are, up for it, for example, I do like to then start to work on how can we optimize sleep through supplementation? How can we help you hit your protein intake more easily, and even make it more enjoyable to hit as well, rather than be eating just boiled chicken breast all day long, and have some stuff, some mad flavored proteins that you really enjoy, and then start to look at some foundational stuff from there.
Yeah, I think there's some dangerous territory there too with what you just mentioned about the fact that people are looking for a magic pill. There are people out there willing to offer that and willing to take your money for it, regardless of the fact that it doesn't exist, regardless of the fact that we don't have the data, regardless of what the science says. There are people willing to, or there are people who have recognized that the public is searching for the magic pill, and they're willing to put their hand up and say, I have it. And for me, I think that's where the stigma comes from. Regardless of if, 90% of the supplement industry is doing the right thing, you do always have that small percentage of people who are going to do the wrong thing, and it's damaging for the whole industry. Do we have supplements that can help us achieve our goals? Yeah, sure. But there is no supplement that can do the work for you, right? And I think that's really an important note, is that supplements can make things a little bit easier and a little bit faster, depending on what we're trying to do, but they can't take away the foundations. There is no supplement there will never be a supplement that exists that can take away your need to go exercise. Yeah. There will never be a supplement that exists that will take away your need to clean up your diet and to be in a negative energy balance, right? So I think trying to take some of that stigma away is tricky.
What I think is really interesting about that, and I think you're dead right, Stu. There isn't stuff that can. But going right back to the start, what I found really, really interesting in some reading I've been doing this week is looking at things like, whilst there isn't anything that can replace you creating that energy balance, that energy in and energy out, like your expenditure has to be manually done, right? Like it's either got to be neat, your BMR. But what I found interesting is, let's say, like looking at some of the foundational stuff, let's look at thyroid, for example, if you've got hypothyroidism, a slow thyroid function, that can be your BMR decreased by up to 30%. Pick an average female, let's say your BMR, let's say, maintenance cows, sort of like 1,800 for maybe up to a 65 kilo semi-active female. 30%, that's a 600 calorie reduction off your BMR. So straight away, then maintenance goes to 1,200. Now, trying to create a deficit of 1,200 calories means you're going to have a really hard time. Even people like all three of us have been in peak week situations. We're all used to starving, but, trying to create a 500 cal deficit of 1,200, you're literally going to have, 2 slices of toast and call it a day.
Yeah, but I think it's important to note, though, that the best way of creating deficit is by increasing output rather than decreasing input. So I would rather give someone who, I'd rather give them more food and just increase their output a whole lot. Because for me, it's easier to increase output and it's less stressful for someone than to take their food away. I don't like taking people's food away. I believe that's going to cause metabolic adaptation and damage over time. What's your stance on that one, Daniel?
I think, I'll always, on individual circumstance, right? And some of the things that I've run into before is that when certain people, like when you're working on pushing energy expenditure up and you're doing, say, structured cardio each day, you're hitting a high step target. I'll have some of the guys competing doing 14, 16,000 steps per day with an hour of cardio, for example, as well. And the steps aren't being tracked when you're doing cardio.
Wow.
And this is in the deep phases of 16, 20 week prep type thing. And in my experience, I've been in the final weeks of prep, I was doing 20,000 steps a day, 90 minutes of incline treadmill walking as a separate non-step tracking modality, and then a full body weights training session 7 days per week as well. So the amount of time training per day was massive. And then you get to the point where you just can't keep adding more, daily movement in to burn more energy.
No, you really, you max that out, hey, that NEAT in particular. Because some people really have gotten a big trend lately of periodizing NEAT. And I think, look, yes, there's a place for it. Like I see NEAT as sort of a way of standardizing in prep. Because like you said, that sort of natural metabolic downregulation that occurs from a deep calorie deficit massively is a thing to be conscious of. But yeah, when you're looking at that longer term thing when you're into prep, I used to use it as more of a maintenance to make sure, okay, I'm hitting my 8 or 10K steps per day. That means my NEAT is going to be consistent, and then I focus on the rest of the output. But if you're doing 20,000 steps plus 90 minutes of cardio on top, mate, plus a weight, so you're probably spending 4 hours a day in a gym. That's wow, Jesus.
Yeah, so that was the last couple of weeks was that much work, and that was at the end, like on the back end of a 24-week prep, so 6 months of dieting, and it was just what needed to be done at that point in time to keep seeing some drops, to keep seeing things moving down. There's a couple of refeed days thrown in there based on the adjustments through the body and stuff, but
wow.
Crazy in terms of, I think another thing I was always conscious of is just how much more efficient the body will become and how good the body is at that, at conserving energy over time. So that, when we look at in a prep, if someone's losing 5, 6 kilos, 7 kilos, 8 kilos, whatever it is, that's much less weight that they're carrying around to do the NEAT. And they're basically, becoming much more efficient. So at the start of my prep, if I was doing an hour of treadmill cardio, for example, I might be burning a few hundred calories. Towards 6, 12 weeks later, 24 weeks later, it might be half that. It might be only 150 calories, for example, in that time, for example.
Yeah.
So it's trying to offset all those adaptations that the body, the body's so smart at survival. For example, these mechanisms start to kick in to try to bring us back to homeostasis, right? So we're fighting against all those things as well. And you just have to dig deeper and dig deeper, which is one of the biggest challenges because it means doing more work, eating less food, which is, not pretty towards the back end.
It's I just had an issue with Stu. Stu has just jumped back in, but I'll just let Stu set up his mic and audio, and I'll actually ask one question there that was really interesting, Dan. I think that's referred to as the adaptive thermogenesis of memory, where it's that down regulation of your metabolism to suit your new caloric inputs. But where do you hit that point? Because what I used to think about quite a lot in prep was managing stresses and how powerful cortisol can be for blunting progress and holding stubborn body fat and its relationship with aldosterone and holding fluid. Yeah. What point do you go, this is just too much activity, the stress is, because I saw this really clearly illustrated. I did two peak weeks back to back. So the comp on the Sunday, had a comp the following Sunday, and I thought, I really want to tighten up for this second show. Let's train twice in the second week a day. Let's go from 1 weight session a day to 2. Probably only about 60% of the programming or 70% of a normal workout split twice. So I doubled my training load in the last week, and I ended up adding like 3 liters of water in that last week in just stress to the body because you're so heavily depleted, so just fried, and then you drastically increase your output and keep your input the same. So where do you sort of draw the line? Like when you're doing 90 minutes of cardio, 20,000 steps, a full body weight training session, and you probably, as a natural competitor with your sort of composition, maybe 2,400 calories by that point in the prep. Where do you sort of, how do you approach that? Where's your point of no return where you're going, there's just too much work, I cannot ask my body to burn any more fat through output. Now we have to look, how did you tackle that?
Well, I think it's, again, like it's similar answer, individual basis. If I was coaching somebody and when I'm coaching people as well, I think everybody has their own individual tolerance levels of how hard they can push themselves psychologically as well as physiologically as well. And then obviously there's external factors to that. Like I've got a young 6-month-old baby boy now. If I had to do that now, I don't know if I could do it, to be honest with you. But back then, like I said, in 17, I was only on 1,600 calories for those last couple of weeks as well. It was like, I was talking, like pushing beyond. And becoming highly emotional because hormone balance was all over the place as well. Stress levels were through the roof, but I actually pulled back from working. I wasn't training any clients. I wasn't productive. I couldn't think clearly. There was brain fog every single day. There was like literally just only one goal in my life at that point in time, especially in those last couple of months. And it was simply to get on stage in like the best condition that I ever could. And I sacrificed a lot of other areas of life in terms of friendships, relationships. Lucky I've got such an understanding wife to go through that with as well. The business was in a place where I had a manager in place as well, had a team that could help out looking after that at the time as well. And it allowed me to just put every single bit of energy I had into the prep, into staying focused with that, into day by day getting that done. But it meant, like a lot of sacrifice on the other side. So I think you really need to be careful for, the average person who it's not their career, it's not their, and they're not that determined to go to that level, for example. I wouldn't put them through that level of dieting, that level of activity level, for example, because it would just be, too stressful on the body, for example. But what I did is just played it by ear by watching day by day. If there was certain days where I was having big drops in morning fasted weight that were showing that we're just pushing a little bit too hard, I would talk to my coach every day, check in with my body weight, and he might throw in a bit of a refeed with a few extra 100 calories that we had sitting there to spare on a based on any big drops that we were seeing, to avoid dropping large amounts of muscle mass through stress levels and things like that. But I think psychologically, man, like having, this, really focused in on what you want to work on can, do wonders for pushing it to that level. But it's not, I wouldn't recommend it for everyone.
Do you feel that the experience you've had with bodybuilding? Can you guys hear me? Sorry. Perfectly. Am I coming out clear? I know I don't have the headset anymore because I had to plug into charge, so I had a few technical difficulties there. But no, it's good. You guys can hear me. I can hear you clearly, so we're all good. Do you feel that your bodybuilding has really led into like your mindset coaching and stuff that you do? Because I know like you put up a lot of videos on your socials that have inspired a lot of people. Like I know, like our local radio host Marjay Saba. He's right into your videos and your motivational stuff. Like, has that dedication to training been what led into the kind of mindset stuff, or is that something that has always been you?
No, I think definitely it's been cultivated over time with the bodybuilding side of things and pushing the boundaries, pushing the extremes as well, because like we talked about, going through, it's not a healthy practice going to those levels, right? And I think you only go there if you're really focused on achieving certain goals, etc. So there's a combination of the bodybuilding side of things. 100% has been some of the best learning curves I've ever had in terms of how far you can push yourself and what we're capable of. And then also the business side of things as well. Like if I'm honest, over time, as the business has grown, the team has grown, the membership base has grown, so has the stress levels, the risk, the responsibility levels that have come with it. And there's been times for me where it's gotten a little bit too much, and I've reached out to psychologists to do some work with psychologists, for example, to get help there. Reached out. I've got like a lot of different mentors I work with from a business level and more so just a personal level as well that I can reach out to get advice from as well. And I think that's been one of the key things to help me grow the business, grow the team, grow the brand, grow the membership base. Just I'm going to throw a charger on my computer. But the mindset thing for me has been almost a deciding factor in terms of being able to get to where we have over the years. So that's why I'm so passionate about it. I love studying it. I'm involved in like multiple mentorships face-to-face and online. And it's funny, like I've been through a process recently where you look at what are your highest values, and some of the questions are like, what do you spend most of your time on? What do you spend most of your money on? Where do you, what do you find yourself talking about the most? Where do you gravitate towards as well? For me, a lot of that these days is mindset, psychology, human performance, stress management, breath work, meditation, these sorts of things, because they've been so fundamental in managing my own health, wellness, and business growth as well.
So for me, the mindset stuff is probably something that really interests me a lot more now, because I've been doing the bodybuilding and muscle building stuff for so many years. The mindset stuff is really an exciting area, and I'm someone who has struggled with depression and anxiety over the years. And that holistic stuff that you're talking about with the meditation and, mindfulness activities is a huge part of my lifestyle now. But I'm getting to a point now where I'm delving into nootropic supplementation and supplements that can help with mentality, positive mindset, release of positive hormones and stuff like that. Is that something you've delved into at all?
A little bit. I've experimented with some subs around alpha GPC and theocrine and a few different 5-HTP and a few things there. Nothing too major, but yeah, definitely. I think there's some good value in like focus-based supplementation, nootropic-based stuff that isn't too stimulating, because like I said, going too far down the stimulus thing has some negative side effects. If you can feel great, but if your cortisol is jacked up through the roof all day long, yeah, you're productive, but where's that going to leave us down the track in terms of health and longevity, which is another thing I've been looking a bit more into as well.
Yeah.
Where are we sitting in terms of a resting heart rate level, a HRV level, a daily stress level as well? Because now, like I said, becoming a dad, I'm starting to think, where am I going to be down the track if I'm just pumping myself full of caffeine to get through each day? Yeah, I'm productive, but fucking in 10, 20, 30 years or whatever, what's going to happen there?
That's really good. Exciting to hear that you're on the same stance as me and Will. We're not really big stimulant guys. Like we do, I'll have a few coffees a day and stuff like that. But I suppose the main difference between when I was in my early 20s and now is I'm not searching for that, crazy pre-workout that's going to make me feel off my face. I'm trying to avoid caffeine where I can, and get my highs naturally, if you will.
Yeah.
And Will's of the same viewpoint, so that's very cool. I do want to ask you one thing, just because we touched on the fact that you have a young one at home and that as well. And this is something I asked Justin Wessels when we had him on. I'm not sure if you know what's coming or not, but
I do. Oh God.
There's this folklore. There's this almost folklore in bodybuilding circles around breast milk and its ability to, I guess, enhance bodybuilders in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. First of all, have you tried the breast milk? Is it a fallacy? Where do you stand on that?
Okay, I haven't purposely tasted breast milk, but by side effect, I actually have.
Accidentally.
And my first comment will be that it's extremely sweet, and I can see why my son loves it so much. But no, I haven't got into getting right into breast milk, although knowing how nutrient dense it is and how beneficial it is, I've thought about it 100%.
Anabolic.
My little man's gaining like a champ, and I'm like, I want to get in on some of these gains.
So I think, I'm going to ask this question to every bodybuilder we have on who has a young child. And I'm sure at some stage we're going to find someone who drinks it and says, mate, I'll tell you what, I put on, 4 kilos of muscle in 12 weeks.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. So it's a no for now. That's not part of your regular regime, breast milk.
Not at the moment. Colostrum, I've used colostrum in the past in terms of like the cow colostrum as well. And it was interesting because I'm like, I've had, when it was coming through, she's like, I've got colostrum now. I was like, I remember supplementing with that a couple of years back. It's what starts to come through before the milk that's really, really nutrient dense as well. So, but let me know if you find someone that's getting massive gains, because I'll go there if I have to.
I like that mindset behind bodybuilders. It's always, I'll do what I need to. It is, and talking what you touched on, I think we're very much in a similar space, Dan, with that, particularly the stress management, where you're going to put yourself adrenally if you want to try and get where you want to go. Like you said, you can keep stoking the furnace, keep adding, stimulants in to keep you charging, but eventually you've got to pay the piper. And you did just, favorite thing with adaptogens and then the herbs around that sort of space, they, you imagine pouring water into a cup, they get, at some point you overflow, but adaptogens give you a bigger cup, so to speak. But at some point you do have to do your dues. But and I think that mindset thing ties in wonderfully with it. But what I always find interesting is someone who's dabbled both supplementally and now also reading into the actual psychology side. I'm always fascinated to hear where you stand on things like, where does the neurochemistry meet the psychology? So when you've got, if your dopamine, if your dopamine system is functioning well, if you've got good serotonin levels, like I tend to look more on the chemistry side, being a bit of a geek on this stuff. I tend to go, you can't hope to have a good mindset if you don't have adequate choline, adequate dopamine, adequate serotonin, and that can be impacted. 80% of that comes from the gut. So poor gut health, straight away, you're screwed. Cortisol as well from systemic inflammation, blah, blah. So I tend to think you need to have the chemistry to have a good mindset, but you need a good mindset to allow the good chemistry. So now you've done both sides, mate. You've worked on the Poliquin era, you've done the training, the nutrition, and now the psychology. How do you tie all that together? Like, where does that
we're getting
fall?
we're getting to the chicken or the egg now, aren't we?
We are.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. But I'll give you my honest opinion, like based on my experiences and stuff like that, would be definitely the psychology, mindset, perspective side of things. In my opinion, will have a huge influence on the neurochemistry that then streams down through the entire body. And like I say that because I've been through periods of time where I've been highly stressed from work and from business, for example, and my perspective on things has been, that this shouldn't be happening. And then when I'm like that, my sleep wasn't great and my resting heart rate was high, my HRV was really low, for example. And then being able to then like do a lot of psychology work on myself, for example, and work out, well, why am I getting triggered by this external circumstance, somebody else's actions, somebody else's behaviors, and then reflecting inwards and going, okay, well, where is it that I might be suffering with some own insecurities, and then I'm worried about, what people might think about me or say about me that's jacking up my cortisol, for example, and affecting all these things negatively. And I'm really seeing that play out. Then spending some time going through like meditation and breath work and working with some mentors and stuff, and being able to rebalance my perspective. And because so often we can see the world one-sided. We expect, things to play out a certain way. And when they don't, we get really, really upset. We don't see the other side. And when we can start to look at, I've done some amazing work with a guy by the name of Dr. John DeMartini, who's like a human performance specialist.
Yep.
I did a weekend with him. I've watched like almost every video that he's ever put out, but I did the breakthrough experience. And what he does is a weekend experience, 2 days. They're like 13, 14 hour long days. We studied till 1 a.m, came back the next morning and go again. And he works with breaking through the most traumatizing experiences that people have ever endured in their life. And I watched this guy live, ask people in the audience, what have they been through that's really challenged them? And people had been like abused and like loss of loved ones, for example. And he'll pick out their most challenged person there in the room, sit them in the middle of the room and go through this process over time, looking at, this person had lost a very, very close loved one, their wife, and then going, okay, what is it that you perceive, you've lost? And they're going, okay, this was bad, I've lost, blah, blah, blah. And they've listed all these negatives. Then they go through a process and go, okay, what are some of the benefits to this? What are some of the other sides of it? Where you've lost somebody to be there for you every day, where's it shown up on the opposite side? And over like a course of a few hours, gone through and showing that energy can't be destroyed. It just transmutes into other forms. And literally listing it out. And it starts to balance our conscious perspective of what's actually going on. And for me, I've gone through this recently with the business shutting down. There's like a fear process where it's like, what am I worried about? Okay, I'm worried about, I'm losing my business. Okay, if I lose my business, what can I do to potentially offset that? I'll list these things out. And then if it does happen, what can I do to reduce the impact of that? List things out, for example. Then if it does happen, what are some of the benefits? List these things out. And if it doesn't happen, what are some of the downsides to that? And you list all these things out. And as you're doing it, it's literally just slowly balancing your perspective to see, you know what? If I lose my business, I'm actually okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
To go.
Yeah, I've never actually
Wow.
I've never looked at that before. I haven't, like, I've done a lot of different things with different psychologists and stuff like that. Being through that, I've battled with mental health myself, but it's something that I've never been shown or looked at before. So it's very interesting. I'm definitely going to have to do look into that. Actually, what I might do is I might grab a note. What was his name again? Dr.
John DeMartini.
I think I've heard that name cross my desk before. I find that really quite fascinating. You said where one influences the other, and then inevitably one. What I always find is really interesting when you start looking at the body as a system recently, and there was a really, really interesting podcast I listened to, which got on this PhD scientist who is really, really big on thinking of the body as a complex system, how everything interrelates, and you straight away start seeing these self-perpetuating loops that happen when you get into a certain, and it happens you can pretty much see it in every part of the human body. And indeed our experience in life, you'll see, like you said, stressful event X happens. So external stimulus comes in, stress response to that. Stress response leads to be in a more of an anxious state, elevated cortisol state, which then in turns, ruins, plays on the rest of the hormonal profile, which in itself perpetuates more stress, which then plays in the gut chem, which causes the inflammation, which dries up the stress. And before you know it, you've got this vicious circle of, where negative perpetuates negative. And, you get, I've been there. Business tends to beat you down. Over years, you do come up with a lot more hurdles than I think a lot of people, if we're in our typical 9 to 5s, wouldn't necessarily encounter. And I've struggled with trying to relate this to partners and relate this to people around me. And I think just the amount of perpetual risk that you've got to be comfortable with sitting in. Like, you've got to be able to really put yourself just in a really precarious position for literally years at a time before you can really hope to see, and that really does play. So I think all three of us, being in somewhat of a similar age bracket, where now it's good to hear all three of us are looking at the longevity game and looking at, okay, we've busted our ass for the last 10 years. We've all tried to make our mark in our industry. What have we done to our bodies to get us there? We've all competed. We've all, had those sleepless nights. We're all parents now. So we've all, lost more sleep than I'm comfortable with. And now I'm really doing this longevity space. I really want to see, I'm about optimizing performance, optimizing health, lowering stress management. And it sounds like all three of us are on the same page. And it's really just from a different way, though. We've all come at it from a different angle, but we've all arrived at the same point. It's really cool.
Well, let's talk a little bit about longevity, and let's talk a little bit about the longevity supplementation, because that's an interesting field in itself. I think that anti-aging subs is a very, very thin ice at the moment, and we start to talk about anti-aging. Then there's not a far leap from anti-aging to, things like energy crystals and.
Yeah, it's a bit of voodoo. Yeah. It's definitely a thing, though, Stu. It's definitely a thing. Like, it's a space that's emerging, but it definitely needs. The data's definitely getting there. Like, there are certain things. They started looking at the length, like telomere length, for example, before. So measuring the rate of DNA translation and stuff, and that could give you an insight into your biological age and versus your actual chronological. And then there was, then they were looking more so at your methylation clock, and which is this crazy thing where the rate your body methylates, converts parts, basically your detox pathway, how fast it runs is a really good indicator too. But there's reliable data now showing how fast we age as an organism. But the supplemental angle, I think you're so right, mate. It gets in that snake oil sort of category because people just, the research is so new that they're literally, as it's coming up, as it's publishing papers, they're already redundant. Like, it's so cutting edge. And
also, it's like it's something that's in a research phase is actually commercially available on the market before the research even finished, right? I've been guilty of this. Everyone knows I've been using NMN for quite some months. But like, getting back to the basics, like even just your antioxidants and things like that, is that something you've delved into at all, Daniel? Like, just things as far as resveratrol and
polyphenols,
fish oils and that sort of thing?
Fish oils I've always been a massive fan of. Resveratrol I did dabble with, back with Poliquin days years ago as well.
Yep.
But it's not anything I've sort of looked too deep into. But like you said, having that shift over time of just focusing on getting as shredded as possible, whereas now it's going more into longevity and long term as well. It's definitely things that I'll be looking more into to see, like, if there is supplementation we can be using to extend that and help to improve that. I'm fucking down, man.
Well, I'm gonna be honest. I've been using an experimental compound called NMN, which is short for beta-nicotinamide mononucleotide. And it's showing some exciting benefits in animal studies. However, in human trials, we don't have the data at the moment. But I feel fantastic. I feel like I'm 25 and I'm coming up on 33. So very anecdotal there. Very much not a science-based argument there. But hey, I love it. So look into NMN, boys.
I've got a super interesting one here, and this is going to tie in everything we all just spoke about. Beautiful little bow, right? And I think it comes into every area we touched on over the last half hour. So a really, really interesting anecdotal sort of situation that I really was thrilled to listen to was, again, going to telomeres. So what was pretty much the gold standard of your biological clock, like how much your body has aged, right? And there was this pro bodybuilder, an Olympia level pro bodybuilder, like it was Ben Mikulski who did this one. His telomeres, when he was 33, his telomeres were where he had the biological age of a 53-year-old. So he had aged his body. He had put 20 years on his clock by years and years and years of huge amounts of food, huge amounts of substances, huge amounts of cardio training. His inflammation was through the roof, all this jazz. Now, what he did then was went on an 18-month campaign, try and do every lever to promote longevity in his life, to try and reverse that. And he actually got it back younger than his age. So he reversed it something like 22 years in 2 years. And the way he did it was focusing on things that we've all been talking about in this last few minutes. It was pretty much everything he did was stress management stuff with a little bit of nutritional angle. So it was things like meditation, breathing, getting up every morning, getting sunlight, allowing your circadian rhythm to actually be set quite well. So consistent sleep times, managing stress, meditation. And I think on the supplemental angle, there was heaps of there. There was, reishis and adaptogens and all the things that can support that. But coming to the fundamentals, I think what it was, I think stress management was possibly the biggest lever, really, when he looked at it at a fundamental level, that really helped him improve his longevity massively. And nutritionally, it was some things like, obviously, we're all into hypertrophy game. We're all bodybuilders. We love mTOR and stimulating that with huge protein intakes and massive amounts of resistance training. Surprisingly, some of the things that were good for longevity weren't that, sadly. It was actually stimulating mTOR less, having less insulins as well, so lower carb diet was linked with it too. But it was really fascinating. The way he went back and actually prolonged and reversed that aging was really tied to stress management, nutritional angle, and I guess that flowed in really well where you and I were speaking, how that flows onto mindset, positive, hormonal balance, well-being. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting place.
Incredible to hear. The fact that, through those interventions, he's been able to not only wind it back, but bring it so far back in, a period of time as well. I love that. I didn't know that. That's unreal.
That's cool.
Yeah, I found, for me, obviously, the NMN stuff, hey, it's a bit, up in the air at the moment, but I've been doing a couple of things over the last about 2 years that I feel, for me, have had a huge impact. And those two things are fasting and cold water immersion. I don't know if you guys have had anything to do with that stuff, but for me, I feel like that's winding back the clock. And I'm happy to preach it to anyone who will listen. But cold water immersion has been amazing for me, and fasting as well. Those are two real things that people can practice that I feel will have a big impact on their stress levels. And
I'm gonna put a twist on this and interview the interviewer for a second, because I agree with both those things. And I've done a lot of fasting lately, particularly whilst I've had the opportunity, because while the training load is so low, not just doing home workouts, I've sort of got a time to give my digestive system a break from 10 years of punching 4,000 calories a day, and I've fasted a lot, and really cut back and I'm sort of doing 1 to 2 meal feeding windows, predominantly at the end of the day when insulin state's quite low, and being almost entirely protein and fats, sort of playing around with it. And it's really, really good. And cold immersion. Dr. Ben Greenfield was on a great podcast recently. He actually said the cold, doing the cold shock therapy or cold immersion, it showed that for 24 hours afterwards, his insulin, his blood glucose levels were down by 40%. So even post-perennial as well. So even after a feed, his blood glucose stayed low all day after spending, I think it was literally 20 minutes in an ice bath. And so it shows low insulin is linked to so many longevity factors, mental health factors, as the ketogenic diet often promotes. So with you, what's your experience, Stu? What are the anecdotal things that you've picked up?
So, honestly, for me, I look at the science, and the science excites me, and then I go and try it on myself. And some of this stuff it's hard to explain in a tangible way. For example, with the cold water immersion stuff, they say there's a certain temperature that the water should be and all this sort of thing. And I don't get that far into it. What I'll try and do is have a cold shower, that sort of stuff for me. Not only does it in the moment kind of invigorate you and kind of, you get that sort of thing happening while you're doing it, but you honestly feel fantastic for 2 to 3 hours after that shower. You feel alive. If you have a hangover, the best thing, I don't know if you ever did the whole jump in the ocean thing when you're hungover, somehow miraculously when you get out, the hangover's gone. But I think more than anything to do with the ocean, it's the fact of dropping that body temperature really fast. Whatever hormone release is happening, you just feel amazing in the moment. But over time, over that 2 years, I honestly feel as though, how do I even describe it? My vitality is better. I literally feel as though I'm younger. And it sounds cuckoo. It sounds crazy, I know, but hey, it's making me happy, so I'm going to continue to do it. Daniel, have you done any of this cold water immersion stuff, Daniel?
I've got a giant commercial freezer at the front that we do ice bars on a weekly basis here with our members. I don't know if you guys have done any Wim Hof method work, breath work. He's got a method, a 3-phase method of breath work, mindset, and cold water immersion ice bars. But
yeah, it's that box breath thing, isn't it? Is that 4-4 box breath Hoffman stuff with the breathing? Is that him?
No, so Wim Hof's got his Wim Hof method. The most famous method that he teaches is 3 to 5 rounds of 30 really big, deep belly breaths where you're breathing as much air in as you possibly can, but you're only exhaling about 75% of the way out. And I first went and did a workshop with him in Sydney a couple of years ago now. It was a day after our Christmas party. I was hungover. I wasn't going to go. A mate of mine took me along. And we ended up in about 500 people doing this breath work. We did a bit of yoga and stuff. And then we did these massive like ice bars there. And I remember going in there and it was like freezing. It was like the hardest thing in my life to stay in there for 2 minutes. Since then, got more into the breath work because of how much benefit I found from it. Started to look into it a bit more. And the guy has broken 26 world records for withstanding extreme circumstances. Not only in the cold, he's climbed to base camp of Everest in only shorts. He's climbed Mount Kilimanjaro in record time. He's been injected with an endotoxin because he would claim, he's been doing this for like 20 or 30 years, and he would claim that he could boost the immune system and fight off bacteria. And people said to him that he was full of shit and that he had no scientific proof of it. So he said, okay, take me to a lab, let's do this. They took him in, they injected him with E. coli, and endotoxin makes people violently ill. He did some breath work and he fought it off and was completely fine, no symptoms whatsoever. So they've said to him, look, that you must be a genetic freak. There's something different about you. He goes, I'll prove you wrong again. Give me 12 random people. Let me train them for a couple of weeks. I'll take them to my training base camp in, I can't even remember exactly where, Switzerland, somewhere, Scandinavian country over there. And they gave him 12 people. They did about 4 days of training. They were outside doing breath work, cold water immersion. He goes, they climbed the mountain in just shorts. And he goes, these guys are ready. Take them. After 4 days, 12 of them, same test where everybody else gets violently ill from the injection. They are 100% pass rate of being completely fine after it. And I started to go down this rabbit hole of watching all these docos and doing all this sort of stuff. I get a bit obsessive about stuff like that when you get into it. And so now I do breath work. I teach it twice a week to our crew. I'm doing it online now. We do ice bars every week. I do them at least 3 times a week myself. And love it, man. The benefits I've seen from it have been next level.
So I'll ask you now, like I really struggled to verbalize how it feels, both, I guess imminently while you're doing because I've done the ice baths as well, while you're doing it, the feeling that you get after, but also the long-term feeling that you get from it. How would you describe the feeling for yourself, or what changes are you noticing in yourself?
The biggest thing for me has definitely been the psychological factor of being able to calm your central nervous system down, calm down that initial stress response you spoke about, Stu, that fight or flight response that the body often wants to just jump into when, like I said before, someone cuts us off in traffic, or our internet drops out, or somebody says something we don't agree with, or whatever. The body just has this really fast loops, Will, that you talked about before, that it wants to have this stress response. So for me, it's been about how can I stress exposure in a controlled circumstance, and then be able to jump in an ice bath, where the first time I did it was like crazy, freaking out, could hardly stay in. Whereas what I do now is I'll jump in and I will try to do a 2-minute ice bath or a 3-minute ice bath with a 6 breath per minute breath rate. So I'll breathe in for 4 seconds and then breathe out for 6. So 10 seconds per breath, 6 breaths per minute, and do that 3 times to do 3 breaths. And to me, it's being able to control your central nervous system through your own mindset, through your own willpower, so that we're not jumping into this stress response constantly and being pushed out of, because when we get stressed, we know we're not digesting properly, we're not recovering properly, we're not rebuilding properly, and we're also not creative, we're not as focused, we're not as clear. The decisions that we make business-wise, relationship-wise, the things we say are usually something we might regret later on, because we're highly emotional, we're highly stressed, we're in these extremes, we're swinging backwards and forwards. So it's about, the ice can teach you to, over time, stay centered through some of the chaos that happens in life. And for me, that's been by far the biggest benefit from it.
That's a really big point with I think the other guy, Dr. Ben Lynch, was the guy that was really big on sort of biohacking that response, and trying to, and you're dead right. Like that what's that? Oh, it's a famous quote saying your whole world lies in the response between a stressor and your response to it. So something that's paraphrased, somewhere along the lines of basically your response to a stress dictates your entire world, and that's so true. The more you can manage that, the more that's going to flow onto all positive benefits of living in less of a stress state. And I think with everyone's busy lifestyles, like I do a lot of seminars on this, I think everyone's lifestyle now is so hectic and just so, like they found, and this is a really interesting study, they did a study back in the 1920s on the average respiration rate, which ties in beautifully with what you're talking about now. The average amount of breaths per minute was 6 to 7 breaths back then. Now they just repeated the study again about 7 years ago, and they found the average respiration rate now is 16 to 17 breaths per minute. And the result is we are all so stressed that we are literally panting and we don't even know about it.
Yeah.
And it is phenomenal. It's profoundly scary the amount of impact that stress has on the average lifestyle now. Like Stu's panting right now, he's just getting right into it. And I love the illustration. It's very useful.
What was that, Will? I'm not stressed.
Man, imagine 16 to 17 breaths a minute, and you're right. It's all chest breathing. It's none of that diaphragmatic, deep parasympathetic breathing. It's all up here. It's all like we're constantly in this and you don't, the way I demonstrate it in my seminar, I ask people, how often have you been walking on the phone to a friend or family member, you're talking, you're excited, and you realize you have to actually take a breath after a few sentences because you're literally, you're so just go. You literally, you're missing a few breaths a minute, and it's.
But could the panting also be in correlation with the dog filter on Instagram?
Look, I did not take into account Insta filters in my data. I'm sorry, Stu, I fucked up. That's fucking cold. You're right. And the increased use of filters that are retarded has also not helped. Contribute to my stress state.
I wanted to move on now to talk about your in-house brand there, Daniel. And I have had a bit of a glance of it because I am friends with quite a few of your members, and I've seen some of them using it. So, what are the products that you have in your range, and I guess why have you selected those ones?
Yeah, sweet. At the moment, we've got a BCAA amino acid product. We've got a couple of different protein products, just a WPI, and then a blend of WPI, WPC, and then we've got a pre-workout as well. So it's just the 4 products that we're holding, just basically to help working on a bit of a one-stop shop for members in terms of having their basics covered, helping them with just finding a nice, simple, clean, effective product that's going to have research-backed ingredients in there to help them with their training goals, stuff that I would recommend, stuff that I use myself, for example, and do that. The plan was to, do a lot more work on promoting it and getting it out there as well, but it just, hasn't had the amount of time and effort that it really needs to get some more legs with it as well in terms of expanding beyond the gym. But at the end of the day, my main focus is still just, the training side of things, the community that we're here with the crew. And if I can support them with some convenience and stuff here, then I think that's pretty cool at the same time as well. But we're looking at that for now, and a little bit of apparel and stuff that we do too, but nothing too major.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing too, isn't it, as well? I think you're probably very similar to myself and Will, where, you're a creative person, your mind's always going, and you tend to want to have 10 baskets going at once.
Yeah.
So sometimes something that, you've got this concept of something, becoming this huge thing, but it's like, do I really have the time to do that at the moment? Like,
and do it properly. Yeah. Yeah. And give it the justice it deserves. Because like you said, you can, and that's another classic sign of elevated cortisol, right? Is multitasking, but not completing any one task. We all are guilty of that as creative people with a higher workload. With all 3 of us, we're all trying to constantly juggle and learn new skills, build new crafts. Like Stu, you're looking into anti-aging right now, and you're already formulating in that space, bringing products to market. It's exciting the pace that all 3 of us, that we all work at. But you're dead right. Like you do at some point go, all right, like for me, every time that I've deviated away from where I think I gravitate towards, which is building my brand, is sort of I get a very big slap on the wrist from the universe, basically saying, basically stay in your own lane. Like I've tried to do retail operations, wasn't very successful. I've tried to do, distribute other brands. Every time I try to do something that isn't building my brand, it's really shot me in the foot. The world's sort of gone very clearly, stay in your own lane, focus and grow what you're here for. You've got there'll be time for it later, I think. Just like you, Dan, you've got a really great community there with some pretty interesting concepts. Like normally gyms have got in-house ice baths and breathing coaching for their trainers. Like there's some really revolutionary things that you don't see elsewhere. I think your attention is pretty well invested, mate.
Thanks, mate. I appreciate it. And it's like you said, I couldn't agree more in terms of, refocusing as well and just being really clear on what it is that sort of lights you up, what you're super passionate about as well. And if we can align, our businesses, our daily actions, behaviors, more so around the things that really inspire us, it's a completely different life to be going down a path of doing something that you actually don't enjoy, each day, that doesn't light you up as well. And, our conversations led a lot of the journey that we've all been on from, focus shifting, for example. And that's another thing for me that's been a big thing. It's like being really in tune with what are the things that create stress and what are the things that, decrease stress or bring more joy, more inspiration and stuff as well. And how can I do more of that stuff on a daily basis? Because then you don't need motivation. You're internally driven to do it, right? You wake up like, pumped for the day ahead to get stuck into it and to work long hours, whatever it takes. And that's when you're talking about, I guess, greater levels of fulfillment in terms of what you're doing and success that comes with it.
Where's that tie over? Because I think all of us going through bodybuilding preps in our time have all probably been at that point where there's motivation and there's discipline, right? Like there's, hey, I really want to go smash it. I want to jump on stage, best stage of my life. I want to do this really hard business task that takes 3-4 years of hard work, cool. And then there's the whole, hey, it's raining, it's shitty, but I got 20,000 steps hit today. Let's go for a walk at 4 a.m. I think a lot of the time, like right now is a great example with everyone doing a lot of home workouts. We physically can't go to gyms even if we want to. I think there's the motivation, but also there's the discipline part of like, all right, it's not ideal. I'm not, hey, am I going to get the most crazy workout of my life? Probably not. But hey, maybe I need to sit in my lounge room and very quietly churn out some sets with a dumbbell or two. I think there's a lot to be said for developing that angle of your mindset too. The real just the staunch angle of just the discipline part of doing things you don't want to, so that you can do better at the things you do want to do later. But I think that's been a really amazing talk. We've covered so much content today that I think people get a lot of value out of. We've spoken on mindset, we've spoken on longevity, health, well-being, hormones. We've spoken on SUPs, competing, business. It's been a wonderful talk, and I think we've got some stuff out of this that anyone can apply to their current space, whether it's in the fitness space or just general life, business, otherwise. And I thank you for sharing some of your obviously illustrious career on that one, mate, because it's, it sounds like we've all got similar mindsets and some really good messages we put across on today's episode. So thank you very much for your time there, Dan. I know you're a busy man and I appreciate being able to pick your brain for so long. It's been a really wonderful episode. So thank you very much for coming on board today, mate.
Absolute pleasure. No, I want to say massive thank you for reaching out and having me on as well. Absolute pleasure joining you guys for the chat, and keep up the amazing work. Keep crushing it, guys.
Thanks so much, Daniel. We will talk to you soon, mate. See you later.
Sounds good. See you guys.
See you guys.